So it is even worth pointing out that Kingsman was almost the definition of a good movie. It only looked like it should have a sequel, but if you thought about it for even a minute, you'd realize, no, this is exactly the kind of thing where you don't make a sequel, because the point of this is to be an imaginary pseudo-sequel to 50 different things, and it's not meant to hold up or have internal consistency of its own. The entire fun of Kingsman was that it was a breezy, silly, just a bit naughty, and ultimately exhilarating, in part because its backgrounding in pulpy British spy novel tradition and the James Bond franchise specifically allowed it to blow through its own backstory and mythos cleanly enough to focus on the good parts of its playfully nasty spy story B-plot and just sincere enough boy becomes a man's secret agent school A-plot without getting bogged down in explaining all the things you'd recognize as references to the past of the genre. The iconography and gimmicks and world building laid on top of Taron Egerton's hero's journey were entertaining as different versions referencing stuff from Bond, Matt Helm, etc., not necessarily worth trying to unpack backwards into their own actual thing. And if you didn't recognize it from the perfectly adequate one and done of the first film, the second one being such a forgettable whatever of a thing should have done the trick. But we're in the age of franchises, or rather we still are, despite The Kingsman having been produced almost 2 years ago and sat on the shelf waiting for Disney-Fox merger to be complete, and now COVID to blow over and is now in theaters because at this point Disney can afford to lose whatever money that a prequel to a franchise everyone stopped caring about years ago was going to lose. So yeah, now here's this prequel nobody asked for, with Ralph Fiennes as a pacifist British ex-soldier turned Red Cross philanthropist turned eventual super spy nobleman as a bonkers but somehow also boring alternative history actioner about how the Kingsman Agency was founded to prevent global catastrophes in response to the early days of World War I.
Come again. Never mind.
And if that plot description kinda sounds strange to you, yeah, they never do manage to reconcile trying to fit the Kingsman universe conceit of an elite British-based independent intelligence agency protecting the world with future tech and ultra-clear ethical commitments into a framework where the rest of 20th century history happens still. As the plot of the film goes, Fiennes and his small crew of like-minded noblesse obliged, as it were, saddle up in response to their own failure to thwart the outbreak of the Great War in Europe by plotting the takedown of Grigory Rasputin in Russia, hoping that this will stem the tide, only to discover that a diabolical conspiracy to destroy the entire global world order is underfoot, and that everyone from the Bolsheviks to the Kaiser to pretty much any recognizable historical figure of the era who can sit around a Legion of Doom table is actually working for a mysterious villain to get it all cooking. It's up to what will eventually become the Kingsman Agency to discover the conspiracy and stop them, but as you can probably guess, none of this can really be stopped because the rest of the series still has to happen, and that means the rest of history still has to happen, i.e. World War I still needs to play out as a giant clusterfuck, World War II needs to happen, etc., etc., so not only do we have the usual problem of World War I being much too anti-heroic and cynical and complicated of a situation to map onto a just-for-fun movie like this, so as a result the story keeps hitting jarring tone shifts of seriousness and unseriousness because the material demands that it must, but also a story that can't not boil down to the Kingsman Agency forms because they all sucked at their only job, and then they continued to suck at it until sometime in the 70s for some reason. Never mind that, well, I'll admit to having fun laughing at the absurdity of the unseen until Act 3 bad guys scheming in the shadows with figures like Vladimir Lenin and Kaiser Wilhelm as mere puppets of his real agenda. It's harder to laugh at that kind of conspiracy silliness when you remember this is just the old-time version of stuff that gets people to shoot up pizza parlors today. And that's not to say that Matthew Vaughn isn't still one of our better action directors even when the rest of the material isn't living up to his visual talents, or that there isn't some fun to be had seeing Ralph Fiennes or Gemma Arterton jump around doing steampunk wire fu business. It's all weightless nonsense until it stops dead and tries to have something to say, so it's not a total loss, but as movies everyone was going to ignore anyway go, you won't feel too bad about forgetting that you forgot to bother with this one. 5 out of 10, eminently skippable stuff.